Virginia, 1859. Autumn. The mirror was a vast, monstrous thing. It did not hang so much as loom, an 8-foot-tall testament to prosperity and vanity, its gilded frame thick as a man's wrist with carved acanthus leaves. It had been hauled by 6 men up the grand staircase of White Stone Hall, its surface shrouded in a velvet pall, a strange funeral procession for an object that held only emptiness. Its destination was the master's study, a room of leather, law books, and Cuban cigars. The one tasked with its final installation was a boy. He stood before the shrouded glass, a small, dark statue in the cavernous room. His name was Isaiah, and he was 16 years old. His instructions, delivered with a casual cuff to the back of his head by the butler, Mr. Ames, were precise. He was to clean the mirror's surface with the provided chamois cloth and vinegar water until it shone, then buff the frame with linseed oil. No streaks. No smudges. Master Charles Whitestone was particular about the reflections of his world. Isaiah drew a breath that tasted of beeswax and dread. He hated mirrors. They were liars. They showed a boy in rough-spun trousers and a too-large shirt, a boy whose skin absorbed the shadows of the room. They never showed what he felt coiled inside, the memory of his mother's lullabies in a language she called Gullah, the map of creeks and deer trails behind the quarters, the sharp, clever geometry of numbers and angles that arranged themselves in his mind without bidding. Mirrors showed a thing, not a person. He pulled the velvet cover away. The glass, still cold from its journey, sighed a faint mist onto the air. Isaiah set to work, his movements economical, silent. The chamois whispered over the surface, chasing away dust and ghostly fingerprints. He worked from the top down, standing on a stool, his reflection growing clearer as he descended. First, the ornate ceiling cornices appeared behind him. Then the top shelf of books, a globe, a painting of a hunting dog. Then his own face, piece by piece. The high brow, the watchful, deep-set eyes that held a stillness older than his years. The full curve of his mouth, which he kept firm and expressionless. He finished the main pane and moved to the beveled edges, where the glass met the gold. It was there, in the right-hand lower edge, that he saw it. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, a warp in the old glass. He leaned closer, his breath fogging a small circle. He polished it clear. It was not a warp. It was an inscription, etched with a delicate, frantic sharpness into the very silvering on the back of the glass. The letters were tiny, angular, almost secretarial in their precision, but they spelled no word he knew. They were a sequence. He traced the shapes with a trembling fingertip on the cool surface. They were alien, runic. A chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air seeped into his bones. He knew, with a certainty that dropped into his gut like a stone, that this was not meant to be seen. This was a secret pressed against the back of the visible world. He heard Ames's footsteps in the hall, heavy and impatient. Without thinking, Isaiah took his chamois cloth and rubbed hard at the glass over the etching, as if to erase it from existence. It remained, of course. It was behind the glass, in its silver soul. Ames entered, his eyes scanning the room like a bailiff. "Master Whitestone will be in presently." "Is it done?" "Yes, sir," Isaiah said, stepping off the stool, his heart a trapped bird against his ribs. "Then be gone." "To the kitchen. Marguerite needs wood." As Isaiah slipped out, Master Charles Whitestone entered, a ledger in his hand. He was a man of 40, with the careful, contained bearing of a bank vault. His cruelty was not in his fists, but in his ledgers, in the cold reassignment of human beings from one page to another, in the quiet withdrawal of privileges, in the terrible, reasonable tone with which he explained why a mother must be sold south. He walked to the mirror, not to admire himself, but to survey his domain reflected in it. He adjusted his waistcoat, a faint smile touching his lips. The empire in the glass was orderly, prosperous, silent. He did not see, and would never see, the faint, ghostly script in the corner, a message from the darkness behind his own reflection. A message Isaiah now carried, burning a hole in his mind. Whitestone Plantation, Virginia, 1843. Isaiah was born on a night when the moon was a sliver of ice in a black sky. He did not enter the world in the main house, nor in the crude infirmary, but on the packed earth floor of cabin number 7, his arrival attended by his mother, Ao, and 2 old women from the quarters whose hands were as familiar with death as they were with life. His first sound was not a cry, but a silent, wide-eyed intake of the chill March air, as if he were assessing the scale of his predicament. Ao, her face sheened with sweat, held him to the weak firelight. He had his father's long limbs, she noted with a pang, and a curious, focused gaze that seemed to settle on things unseen by others. She whispered to him in a blend of English and the coastal tongue of her own mother, words of protection, of warning, of a world that would try to own him but must never own his spirit. She named him Isaiah, for the prophet who saw what others could not, and secretly, in the quiet of her heart, she called him Edebisi, the king is born, a joke and a defiance against the universe. His father, Isaac, was a master carpenter, his value to Whitestone measured in the flawless dovetail joints of the library shelves, the smooth glide of every window sash. He was allowed a measure of freedom, a pass to leave the plantation for work in the nearby town of Briarwood. On the night of Isaiah's birth, he presented Ao with a tiny, whittled dove, its wings smoothed to a satin finish. For his pocket, Isaac said, his voice gravelly with emotion. To remind him he's meant to fly. The early years were a patchwork of small joys and looming shadows. Isaiah's world was the yard behind the kitchen, the dusty lane of the quarters, the vast, humming fields beyond. He learned the rhythms of the plantation, the pre-dawn horn, the overseer's tally, the sun's brutal arc, the weighing of the day's pick. He learned silence. To be still and small when Master Whitestone's dark buggy passed, to make his child's laughter disappear into the buzz of crickets when the white foremen were near. His parents were his fortress. Ao worked in the big house laundry, her hands perpetually raw from lie, but her spirit unbent. She taught Isaiah the stories of Anansi the spider, tales where the small and clever outwitted the powerful and brutal. Isaac, in stolen moments in his workshop amid the scent of pine and oak, taught him the language of wood, how to read the grain, to listen for the truth in a plank, to understand that strength often lay in flexibility, not in rigid force. The fracture came when Isaiah was 7. It was not announced with shouting or whips, but with a summons. Master Whitestone stood on the back porch, his ledger open. Isaac was called forward. Ao, sensing the void opening before her, clutched Isaiah to her skirts. Isaac, Master Whitestone said, his tone conversational, your work is highly regarded. Mr. Cartwright in Briarwood is building a new hotel and has made a generous offer for your hire. For 6 months. It was a sentence, not a proposal. Hiring out was common, but it was a form of family roulette. Sometimes men came back. Often, they did not, sold on from their new location, lost in the labyrinth of the trade. Isaac's face, usually so composed, went ashen. He looked at Ao, at Isaiah. Master, my family will be perfectly fine, Whitestone finished, closing the ledger with a soft, definitive thud. The boy is of an age to be useful in the stables. Ao's work continues. The arrangement is settled. You leave at first light. There was no argument, no plea that would not make it worse. That night, in their cabin, Isaac held them both. He pressed the little wooden dove into Isaiah's hand. You are the men of the house now. You care for your mama. You watch. You listen. You remember everything. His voice broke on the last word. At dawn, Isaiah watched his father climb into the back of a cart, his tools beside him. He did not look back. It was a lesson Isaiah learned then, looking back was a luxury for the free. The cart rolled down the long drive, became a speck, and was swallowed by the dust. He never saw Isaac again. Months later, a whispered message came through the grapevine of slaves who moved between towns. Isaac had been sold from the hotel worksite in Briarwood to a trader heading for the Mississippi Delta. Ao received the news while ironing a pile of Whitestone shirts. She did not pause her work. The only sign was a single, perfect tear that fell onto the white linen and sizzled into a tiny, star-shaped scar. The geometry of survival. 1845 to 1855. Isaiah's childhood ended with the cart's departure. He was assigned to the stables, a world of hay, manure, and the immense, shifting warmth of the plantation's horses. Old Ben, the groom, a man with a back bent like a question mark, became his reluctant teacher. "Horses is smarter than most men," Ben grumbled, showing Isaiah how to muck a stall without getting kicked, how to mix feed, how to calm a nervous mare. "They know fear. They know kindness. They know a lie. You be straight with them." But Isaiah's mind, sharp and restless, sought patterns beyond the stable. He began to notice things. He could estimate the weight of a hay bale by its size. He could calculate in his head how many buckets of oats would last the team a week. He saw the geometry in the rafters of the barn, the angles of the fences. He started drawing shapes in the dusty floor with a stick, triangles, squares, complex interlocking patterns, only to swiftly scuff them out if footsteps approached. His silence deepened, becoming a well others could not plumb. He spoke when spoken to, his answers minimal, correct. He became a ghost in the machinery of Whitestone, noticed only for his efficiency. In the big house, where he was sometimes sent to fetch or carry, he moved through the rooms like a shadow, absorbing everything, the placement of keys, the routines of the household, the conversations of the Whitestones, who spoke as if the furniture had ears but could not comprehend. He saw the quiet cruelty that sustained the manor. He saw Master Whitestone deny a request for a blanket for an old woman with shaking hands, not out of malice, but with a sigh about setting precedents. He saw the mistress, Eleanor, a woman of porcelain complexion and a heart of frosted glass, have a young maid, Tess, sold because she had a sly look after a piece of silver went missing. It was later found in a drawer. The punishment was administrative, dispassionate. It was the system itself, polished and cold as the silver on the dining table, that did the violence. Isaiah's one solace was his mother. Their moments were stolen, a touch passing in the hallway from the kitchen, a shared glance during Sunday services where a white preacher told them obedience was godly. She would whisper old stories, hum old songs. She checked his pockets for the little dove, a ritual. "As long as you have this, a part of your daddy walks with you," she would say. "And a part of you is already free." When Isaiah was 13, a new overseer arrived, a man named John Riggins. He was not a cartoon brute, he was a businessman of misery. Lean, with accountant's pallor, he believed in maximum yield with minimum investment in human capital. He instituted a system of tickets. Each enslaved person received a daily ticket for completing their task. No ticket meant no evening meal. A week of tickets earned a small portion of molasses or salt pork. It was cruelty by ledger, and it was devastatingly effective. It was Riggins who first noticed Isaiah's peculiar skill with numbers. During the tobacco harvest, the weigh-ins were a chaotic, contentious process. Riggins, struggling with a column of figures, barked at Isaiah to hold the lantern steady. As Riggins muttered over his arithmetic, Isaiah, without thinking, said softly, "That's 384 pounds, sir. At 16 ounces to the pound, that's 6,144 ounces. Riggins froze, his pen hovering over the paper. He looked at Isaiah, then at the scale, then did the calculation himself. It was correct. A strange, calculating light entered Riggins's eyes. Not admiration, but the look of a man who has found a useful tool. "Can you read, boy?" "No, sir," Isaiah said truthfully. The numbers just came, arranged themselves. Letters were a different mystery. From then on, Isaiah was pulled from the stables more frequently to assist Riggins with tallies, with inventory counts in the storage sheds, with measuring fields. It was a dangerous promotion. It brought him closer to the inner workings of the plantation's economy, but it also made him a target for the jealousy of others and placed him under Riggins's cold, observant eye. He was given a slate and chalk to use for sums, a terrifying and empowering object. He learned to hide the full extent of his ability, to occasionally make a small, deliberate error to seem merely quick, not preternatural. The Silvering and the Storm. 1858 to 1859. The years hardened Isaiah into a young man of quiet intensity. He had his father's height and his mother's penetrating gaze. He kept the wooden dove, now worn smooth as a river stone, tied in a scrap of cloth and hidden in a crevice of his sleeping pallet. His world was a narrow corridor between the stables, the fields, and Riggins's ledger-filled office. He watched his mother age prematurely, her cough from the laundry steam becoming a permanent, rattling companion. The turning point began with a mirror. Not the great one in the study, but a smaller, older one. Master Whitestone had purchased a new set of French pier glasses for the parlor. The old ones were to be cleaned and stored in the attic. The task fell to Isaiah and his mother. In the dusty, hot silence of the attic, as they wiped down the ornate frames, Ao paused before one whose silvering was peeling at the edges, creating a distorted, fragmented reflection. She stared into it, not at herself, but at the decaying silver. "My grandmother," she said, her voice a low murmur meant for the dust motes. "She worked in a big house in Carolina. She told me a story about mirrors. She said the people who make them, the ones who put the silver on the back, sometimes they breathe a secret into it. A wish, a curse, a name. She said the mirror holds it, holds the truth behind all the pretty reflections." She turned to Isaiah, her eyes fierce. "You remember that, son? The truth is always behind the glass they hold up to the world." A week later, Ao's cough worsened. She collapsed in the laundry, a froth of blood on her lips. The mistress, fearing consumption, ordered her moved to a disused smokehouse behind the quarters. Isolation was a death sentence. Isaiah begged to see her, to care for her. Riggins refused. "Contagion is a threat to property," he stated. "You have your duties." Isaiah began to steal. Not food or goods, but time. In the deepest part of the night, he would slip from the quarters, a stolen key to the smokehouse now pressed in wax and replicated from Riggins's ring, a trick of observation he'd learned watching his father. He would bring her water, a bit of stolen honey, hold her hand. Her mind began to wander in the fever. She spoke in the old tongue, called for Isaac, whispered about the river that runs both ways, and the star path. On one of these visits, her grip on his hand was suddenly strong, lucid. "The ledger," she whispered, her eyes burning in the gloom. "Your daddy, he was sold to a man named Sutter. Down the river. I heard Master talking once, the bill of sale is in his study. In the black ledger with the iron corners. Page near the back." A fit of coughing seized her. When it passed, she was weaker. "You find your way, Isaiah. You find your way to him. Or you find your way out. Promise me." He promised, the words ash in his mouth. 2 nights later, she was gone. They buried her in the grove beyond the quarters, a place of unmarked mounds. No one spoke. Isaiah stood over the raw earth, the wooden dove clutched so tight its wings bit into his palm. The fortress was dust. All that remained was the promise, and the cold, geometric clarity of a plan beginning to form in his mind. He needed to see that ledger. His chance came with the delivery of the new, massive mirror for the master's study. After his discovery of the etching, the strange runes burned in his mind. He began to listen more intently to the white folks' talk. He heard Master Whitestone speak of the mirror's provenance. It was from the estate of a recently deceased scholar in Baltimore, a man fascinated by ancient Northern European antiquities. Ancient Northern European runes. A terrible, wild hope began to knit itself together with his grief. What if the etching was a message? What if it was a map, or a key? What if his mother's story about secrets in the silver was true? His plan, once a vague notion of flight, now had a first destination, the study. He needed to see the ledger for his father's fate, and he needed to understand the runes. He became a phantom in the house, using his duties as a cover to learn its rhythms. He noted that Master Whitestone took his nightly brandy in the study from 9 until past, then retired. Mr. Ames locked the house at 10. The study key was kept on a ring in Ames's butler's pantry, but Isaiah had observed that the window latch on the study's west side was warped. A strong, thin blade of metal could trip it from outside. The night he chose was in late November, 1859. The air was crisp, the sky a vault of cold stars. The world was tense. News of a raid on some arsenal in Harper's Ferry by a madman named Brown had trickled down, putting the whites on edge and a strange, electric hope in the quarters. After his final duties, Isaiah secreted himself in the hayloft. At midnight, he slipped out. He moved like a shadow across the frost-stiffened grass. The house was a dark monolith. He found the study window. Using a forged metal shim from his father's old toolbox, he worked at the latch. It gave with a soft snick. He slid the window up, an inch at a time, the sound lost in the sigh of the wind. He climbed inside. The room was bathed in moonlight, which glinted on the great mirror. For a moment, he saw himself, a trespasser in this temple of control. He went to the desk. The ledger with iron corners was there, heavy as a tombstone. He lit a single stolen match, shielding its flame. His fingers, numb with cold and fear, found the pages. Bills of sale. He scanned the cramped, precise script. Isaac, aged 32, skilled carpenter, sold to Jeremiah Sutter of New Orleans, for the sum of $1,200. The match died. He had it. A name. A city. He turned to the mirror. In the moonlight, the runes were invisible. He needed light. He dared to light the small oil lamp on the desk, turning the wick low. He lifted it, approached the glass, and angled the light toward the lower right bevel. He traced them again. Whitethorn. It wasn't a word, but a name. A place. His mind, so good with patterns, scrambled. He heard a floorboard creak in the hall. His blood turned to ice. He extinguished the lamp, plunging the room back into moonlit gray. He rushed to the window, but it was too late. The door opened. John Riggins stood there, holding a bullseye lantern. He was not supposed to be in the house. He had been checking the grounds, he later said, and saw a light. For a long moment, they stared at each other. Riggins's face showed no anger, only a cold, profound satisfaction. "I had a notion it might be you," he said quietly. "The numbers boy. Thinking he's a man. Thinking he can read." "I wasn't," Isaiah began. "Don't," Riggins cut him off, his voice like a file on iron. "You were in the master's study, after hours, with a light. That's a hanging offense in some counties. Or a flaying offense." He stepped forward. "You belong to me now, boy. More than you ever did. You understand. Your clever mind just bought you a lifetime in the swamp fields, or on a chain gang. Maybe I'll tell Master you were stealing. He does hate a thief." Isaiah saw his future, not flight, but a descent into a deeper circle of hell. He saw his father's face, his mother's grave. He saw the runes, Whitethorn, a useless mystery. A desperate, silent fury rose in him. As Riggins reached for his arm, Isaiah did not fight. He went limp, then suddenly dropped, rolled, and kicked the ledger off the desk. It slammed into Riggins's shins, causing him to curse and stumble. Isaiah was up, out the window, into the night. He heard the shout behind him. "Stop! Thief! Stop him!" He ran. Not with plan, but with the raw, terrifying instinct of a flushed deer. He hit the tree line at the edge of the property and plunged into the darkness, the brambles tearing at his clothes, the sound of dogs beginning to bay in the distance. He ran toward the river, the only geography he knew promised change. He ran with his mother's whisper in his ears, his father's name in his heart, and a single, cryptic word burning in his mind, Whitethorn. The river and the reflection. 1859 to 1903. Isaiah's flight was a harrowing odyssey of close calls and fleeting kindnesses. He used the North Star when it was visible. He moved by night, hid by day. He foraged, stole from pig pens, drank from muddy creeks. The name Sutter, New Orleans was a beacon in the wrong direction, but the name Whitethorn began to surface in strange ways. He overheard two white fishermen on the Potomac mention a Whitethorn crossing, up near the Pennsylvania line, a known spot for railroad business. The Underground Railroad. A tremor of understanding went through him. The Mirror's previous owner, the scholar, had he been an ally? Had he etched a station name into the very fabric of an object destined for a plantation, a desperate, elegant bottle tossed into a sea of misery? Guided now by purpose, Isaiah found his way to Whitethorn Crossing, a secluded ferry landing with a dead thorn tree bleached white by lightning. A taciturn ferryman, after a long, silent assessment, pulled him across and pointed north without a word. There followed a chain of safe houses, of hidden compartments in wagons, of breathtaking risk. Isaiah used his silence, his keen observation, to good effect. He learned the coded language of quilts on lines, of songs sung at certain times. He made it to Philadelphia, a free city. He was emancipated, skeletal, and utterly alone in a roaring metropolis. He found work as a laborer, then, when his skill with numbers was discovered, as a clerk for a sympathetic Quaker merchant. He learned to read and write properly. The Civil War erupted. He watched from a distance, a free man of color, his heart a battlefield of its own. He enlisted when he could, serving as a quartermaster's aide, his genius for logistics finally serving a cause he owned. After the war, he did not go south to search for his father. He knew the odds. The name Sutter was common, New Orleans a vast graveyard of shattered families. Instead, he built a life. A careful, quiet life. He married a schoolteacher named Grace, a woman with a laugh that reminded him of spring water. They had children. He started a small business, a printing shop that grew steadily. He was a respected, somewhat reserved figure in his community. But he never forgot. He kept the wooden dove on his desk. And he pursued the mystery of the runes with a scholar's patience. He frequented libraries, sought out experts in ancient languages. In 1882, he finally found an elderly linguist at the University of Pennsylvania. He showed the men the sequence, carefully transcribed. Old English Futhorc, the professor mused. Anglo-Saxon runes. This is interesting. It's a transliteration. These runes don't just represent sounds, they have names and meanings. Is win, joy. Is hagel, hail, disruption. Is, ice, stillness. Is tear, honor, guidance. Is horse, movement. Is thorn, protection, danger. Is Othala, inheritance, homeland. Is rad, journey, riding. He looked at Isaiah. As a word, it spells Whitethorn, a location, yes. But as a sequence of concepts. Joy disrupted, but in stillness, find guidance. Move with protection through danger to claim the inheritance of your journey. It's a blessing. A very specific, powerful blessing hidden in plain sight. Isaiah left the library and walked for hours. The message, breathed into the silver by some unknown, courageous hand, had been waiting for him. It had not been a map, but a compass. It had guided the essence of his flight, not its path. In 1903, a national magazine published a series on the old plantation homes of Virginia. One article featured Whitestone Hall, now owned by a wealthy industrialist. There were photographs of the restored house. One was a family portrait of the new owners in the study. In the background, cleaned and gleaming, was the great mirror. Isaiah, now a man of 60, saw the magazine at his club. He bought a copy, took it home, and studied the photograph under a magnifying glass. There, in the lower right corner of the mirror, barely a speck, he could just make out the faintest irregularity in the reflection. The etching, still there, holding its secret. He showed it to his grandson, a bright-eyed boy of 10. "See there, in the glass," he said, his voice soft. "What is it, grandfather?" "A message," Isaiah said. "From a long time ago. A message that helped me find my way home." The boy peered. "I can't read it." "That's all right," Isaiah said, putting an arm around him. "I read it for you." The experts who examined the 1903 portrait a century later, using high-resolution digital scans, turned pale not because they understood the runes immediately, but because of the forensic detail they revealed. In the magnified reflection of the mirror, they could see, not just the ghostly runes, but the faint, blurred reflection of the person who must have been cleaning it when the photograph was taken, a young black servant boy, turned slightly away, his face a smudge of chiaroscuro. And beside him, on the polished floor, almost invisible, was what appeared to be the tiny, spectral silhouette of a bird, fallen from a pocket. It was a palimpsest of history, the proud new family, the ancient blessing, the forgotten boy, and the dove. They turned pale at the sheer, layered weight of it, the story upon story, most of which would never be told, all captured in a single, silent rectangle of silvered glass. The mirror, they realized, had never been just an object. It was a witness. And in its cold, depthless eye, the true history of the house, and the nation, was forever trapped behind the reflection of the powerful, waiting for someone with the right kind of sight to finally see.